Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the February 15th, 2022 Post Falls City Council meeting. Clerk will note that all council members are present. And we do have a couple of announcements tonight. The City of Post Falls and the city's finance department has been awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for its annual comprehensive financial report, ACFR, from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada, GFOA. We love acronyms. This is the 23rd consecutive year that the city has received the award. The city also received the GFOA's award for Outstanding Achievement in Popular Annual Financial Reporting, which is a condensed, user-friendly guide to the ACFR. Congratulations to Jason and his team on the continued success of receiving both awards. And I mention this every year. Of course, I think this whole string started when our city administrator was director of finance. So and Jason just walked in, but I know he won't let her down. City Hall and city business offices will be closed Monday, February 21st in observance of President's Day. Police, fire, and rescue services for life-threatening or in-progress emergencies may be reached by calling 911. The police department will be open for walk-in emergencies. For water department emergencies, call 208-773-3517. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits? Seeing none, would you please present the consent calendar?
This might be one of the shortest ones
I
I've
was
ever
gonna
read. Item A is minutes from the February 1st, 2022 City Council meeting. Item B is payables January 15th through February 7th, 2022. And item C is request surplus of old computer equipment by IT department. And they do strip these things down and use all the pieces and parts before we surplus.
Any questions?
I move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Shannon, please take the roll.
Walker.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can turn your nameplate around.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes with Walker getting 2 votes.
Early and often.
Vote as often as I can, yes.
Tonight, we do have 3 public hearings. And if anyone wishing, wishes to testify, forms are on the back. Please, on the podium in the back, please fill them out. Turn them into Shannon, and we'll let you speak. So the first public hearing tonight is the fiscal year 2022 budget amendment number 2. I'll open the public hearing. Jason.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm asking for a budget amendment. What I'm going to ask for is the wastewater treatment plant is currently doing expansion. And we have the funding from the increased revenue and the fees in one fund, which is the operating fund, and the actual asset is being constructed in another fund. So we have decided to use the reserves, cash reserves we have, instead of using the DEQ loan that was approved. So in order to use the funds I have in the operating fund, I need to do a transfer. So the transfer is for $25 million. So I need to get approval for the transfer for $25 million, and then appropriate the money in the 651 to construct the asset to use to expend the funds. So when you look at the packet, there's a $50 million budget amendment, but it's really a 2-step in governmental accounting. 1 to authorize the transfer, and 1 to appropriate the funds so we can spend them.
So we're going to utilize the reserve funds as opposed to having to pay interest.
Yeah, that's the reason we've increased the rates probably since, I think it's 2013. Those increases, we have enough cash reserves that we don't need to utilize the DEQ loan.
And that was, we just had a workshop on that, and that was part of the planning from the 2013 plan.
Right.
And we'll still use the loan. It'll just be at a later time,
Yeah.
so less interest will be paid.
Yeah, that's true.
Good. Any questions, Jason, at this point? Anyone wishing to testify?
We have none.
With that, I will close the public hearing. Council.
Move to approve the fiscal year 2022 budget amendment number 2.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next public hearing tonight is the update to the fiscal year 2022 fee resolution. I'll open that public hearing.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to point out any change in the fee resolution in your council packet. I tried to highlight what it currently is to what it's going to be. The last time I did the parking fees, I thought that was the end of the parks request. But further on the attachment, Dave wanted to change some of the parks and rec fees as well. So since Park and Rec is about ready to enter their big swing time for the summer, we needed to get those fees approved. So you'll notice that recreation fees are highlighted in yellow. Some camp changes. Changed how we're going to evaluate the event sponsorship. It's just negotiated versus having a fee. And the only other change that we had it's toward the back of it is, we have an item in our code that asks for a fee related to any type of, if somebody wants to change the street name in their area, we have a $250 fee for that now in our fee resolution. So that's also up for your consideration as well,
Do they have to pay that fee when they request it, or only if approved?
when they request it.
So it may not be approved.
May not be approved.
I thought it was interesting.
Under what circumstance would someone change a street name?
Sometimes if there's somebody that's only living, if there's only one, you have to have everybody's approval to change the name. But if you have a street, say you're the only one that lives on it, and you want to change the name, so obviously everybody's going to approve it.
Right.
So you can pay the fee, change the name, and off you go.
But it's gotta be reviewed for 911 response purposes,
Yeah,
et
there's
cetera.
some approvals, I do believe, in that process.
And the GIS system has to be updated, so there's some administrative work behind it.
Right, so just, those that are watching, that's the purpose for that fee, because all that stuff, people wanna get paid for their time, so.
Right.
Plus. Any questions of Jason on this? Anyone wishing to testify?
We have none.
I'll close that public hearing. Council.
I would move to approve the update to the fiscal year 2022 fee resolution.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Shove,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And
And the
Mr. Mayor, I just want to, for the new council members, let you know, when the fee resolutions come forward, it always is inclusive of all city fees. We used to do separate resolutions, but then it was much harder for people to find fees because a fee may have been adopted 10 years prior. So when you get them, there's a lot of fees there. Jason always highlights anything that's been changed to make it easy for you.
It's anything over, is it 3% that has to come before us for public hearing? 5%?
5%. And
5%
honestly,
increase?
we try to, no matter what, include all fee changes within our public hearings for the most part. You would have a resolution even if there's no public hearing on something under 5%. But we typically, Jason tries to make sure he rolls everything into the public. We do a public hearing usually a couple times a year. And so that way, everybody gets an opportunity to speak on it.
Thank you. And the third and final public hearing tonight is Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, Kootenai County Emergency Medical Service System Comprehensive Plan Amendment. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Mr. Manley.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, and members of the City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls, presenting this comp plan amendment. As you're aware, many are aware that the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, they're looking at implementing impact fees throughout the county, and they've had their public hearings that talk about those capital plans. This slide here, in the highlighted yellow area, that's the plans being cited. You have in the fire protection and emergency being cited. You have in the fire protection and emergency service section in the comprehensive plan, this language was not in that. What this is proposed added language to the comp plan that identifies the statutes that enable this, what's being asked, and the plans that are being cited. So there'd be concurrency in those proposed capital plans and our comprehensive plan. That's pretty much the gist of the meat of what's being proposed, is just this text right here. Not here intended to talk about the plans per se. The applicant, the fire, they're here to talk if there's any questions on that matter. But the matter at hand is this, the language you see here.
Pretty straightforward. Any questions of John? Thank you, John. Anyone wishing to testify?
We have none.
I'll close this public hearing, and those will be the three shortest public hearings, I think, on record to match the shortest consent calendar. Council, how'd you like to act?
Well, this addresses,
I've got a question, Bill.
Okay, go ahead.
Will Kootenai Fire and Rescue need to do this in all cities?
Yes, so yeah.
Yes. Each city that's going to collect impact fees needs to go through this process, the county as well, to add this to their comprehensive plan. That's followed up with an intergovernmental agreement and an ordinance to adopt the fees. So you'll be seeing, assuming this passes tonight, you'll see from us coming forward a resolution to codify this as well as agreements and an ordinance. And that would happen in each of the jurisdictions.
Has that happened anywhere yet?
They're working on it. They're running them all at the same time. So I'm not sure where they're at with the other jurisdictions, but they're working on it at the same time.
I wanted to be first.
Council, how'd you like to act?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does the KCFR have any say or opinion on the rates that are levied or changes in rate and impact fees that are collected, or is there any control that they have over that?
So
Or is it in
there's their consultant, they hired the consultant that generated the impact fees. And so, yeah, they had a lot of say in it. They're the ones that prepared the study that sort of laid out what the fees are.
Okay, so moving forward, any say increases, they would propose that to us, and then we would have
Yes,
final
the
authority.
one caveat, and we're working on this in the agreement, is we adjust our impact fees annually based on the engineering news record index, and so we would have that in place for them as well. So each fall, when we update our fees, their fee would also be adjusted for inflation annually. And then I want to say it's like every 5 to 10 years, you're supposed to touch this and update your fees. So in that increment of time, you would be seeing from them again another request to go through the hearing process to update their fees.
Okay.
Any other questions?
that's the comment, this is one of the most pervasive concerns that came up over and over and over again regarding the growth, so I'm glad to see movement on it, and thank you to the fire department for pushing this forward.
It's interesting to see that I agree with you, and it's interesting to see that there are those that feel that it's just going to continue to force the prices of homes up. So I know where that balancing act is, but I think this is a step in the right direction. Now, does anyone care to make a motion?
Well, I would move that, that we pass the Kootenai County Fire and Rescue and Kootenai County Emergency Medical Services System Comprehensive Plan Amendment, CPA-0002-2021.
Second.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Schoaf,
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item tonight is unfinished business, returning ordinances and resolutions. We have none. Followed by new business, and we do have one item under new business, contract with JUB Engineers for the Water Reclamation Facility Planning Study and Financial Plan. Craig.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Craig Bornpole, Utilities Manager for the City of Post Falls. I'm here to speak to you tonight requesting authorization to sign a contract with JUB Engineers for the Water Reclamation Facility Plan. Real quick, a facility plan is sometimes otherwise called a master plan, sort of interchangeable. The terminology is we like to I like to use facility planning study as we're really looking at the infrastructure. You've seen this photo before, but I was too excited to leave it out of this presentation. Thanks for your attention earlier today as we gave a broad hopefully a broad-based understanding of wastewater treatment in the City of Post Falls. The history of the water reclamation facility, as you learned, originally constructed in 1984, 1985. The construction cost was $5.7 million. And over 90% of that was grants. And prior to its construction, Post Falls was the largest unsewered community in Idaho. Question came up earlier about what was there before that. All the homes were connected to septic systems, so it wasn't just open discharge. We were taking homes off septic systems and centralizing treatment. So facility planning history, a little bit of where we've come from. There was a plan completed in 2000. There was another plan completed in 2008. The most recent facility plan was completed in 2013. So the timing is somewhat logical that we're nearing the need to re-up on our facility plan. And with that being the case, what are we going to look at if we complete a facility plan right now? We'll look at solids. The photo on the right, we described earlier that we used to store the biosolids outside. That's the big long building on the right. And the tall building closest to where the camera took this photo is a biosolids hopper that is isolated, and we pull air from there, run it through air scrubbers to try and reduce some of those odors. And trucks drive up, it loads out right into the truck and drives away the biosolids. So that's the system that we're using right now. We anticipate as the new treatment technology comes online, production of those solids is going to go up. And so we'd like to evaluate the existing system and the technology that we're using, and is that appropriate for the planning horizon. We want to vet various biosolids treatment options as part of this study. Out of that will come some capital improvement timing and costs, which will be important to realize later. Solids, we also want to look at the liquid, obviously. The image on the right is from that 2000 facility plan, and it showed some growth projections, load projections. I was intrigued by that and took a look at where did it estimate we would be in 2022, and it had an estimate of about 5 million gallons per day. We were a little bit under that, so we were actually thinking we may grow quicker than we have, but we're designing for 5 million gallons right now, so not too far off that design flow. For the liquid stream, again, we want to update the flow and waste load projections. Water use has actually changed quite a bit with more efficient fixtures. What that means for us is the strength of the wastewater coming into the treatment plant is stronger per gallon than it used to be. So update those load projections and also just the total volume based on growth projections. We're going to do a regulatory and permitting review, take a look at anticipated limits that we're going to need to meet, and make sure we're on track to do that. And then discharge options, timing and cost. Again, looking at Spokane River discharge versus reuse and utilizing some of the various reuse properties that we talked about earlier, the timing and cost of when those would be needed. Solids, liquid, not quite gas, but odor. Also in the proposed scope is an odor evaluation, review the existing performance capabilities. So it's probably easier with the mouse if it shows up on both. It does. So this is our headworks, and a lot of the smells of wastewater treatment actually happen in the headworks, and these are our equalization basins. And the piping, we're pulling air off of there and running it through this biofilter. And in theory, it comes and it goes, and we've had some operational challenges with operating that system. And also, sometimes there's bypass and those smells get by. So it's an important component to wastewater treatment as population density increases and comes closer to our facility. We want to be responsible neighbors and make sure we're handling those odors as best we can. So evaluate that system. With that also is going to come some timing and cost. And then I've lumped a whole bunch of other things in just sort of an other category. The photo on the right is some of the original clarifiers that, just based off capacity, they're not really valuable to us to use in the treatment process anymore. They're undersized for what we would need, but they're still sitting out there. And I'd like to take a look and see, are there other uses for this existing infrastructure rather than building new that we could take advantage of? Legacy infrastructure, as I call it, analysis included in there. Another component is a lot of the solids that we collect from just normal maintenance activities out in the collection system. We have a Vactor receiving station, and there's a high amount of operational hours spent on keeping that system working. There's a lot that comes in, and I think we can do better. So I'd like to take a look at the Vactor receiving station. Included in the scope are some council workshops to present our findings to you in a similar format, before a council meeting. And there's, some final deliverables. I'm guessing between here and here thickness of a report. We're not just going to study. We're going to develop this facility plan that guides, over the planning horizon. So, some deliverables. Also included in this is a financial analysis. So the existing rates that we have were set in 2013, and we owe it to our ratepayers to make sure that we are hitting that sweet spot of, having financial resources to replace equipment when it goes down, but not overstressing them in their utility payments. As stated, as part of this is a financial analysis. We're also going to collate the collection system master plan, facility plan that was adopted last year. The photo on the right is the capital improvement plan taken from that, so there were some dollar numbers. So again, the timing seems to make sense. We can take the financial planning from the collection system master plan, what we learned from this one, to go into this financial analysis. A couple items that we've asked for in there is a rate structure and some alternatives to be developed. We do get questions about, I use very little water, and my water bill, it fluctuates based on how much water I use, but I have to pay the same. I'm a single person in my own home. I'm paying the same sewer rate as somebody who may be using a lot more sewer. We've heard that question often enough that without a good answer, I'd like to see if there are some rate structures that might account for that. All of that is we wouldn't be adopting any of that, as part of this, but we want to do some of that study. And then, interesting, the last discussion was about impact fees. We want to do an impact fee, have the financial group do an issue paper on that, and make sure we're appropriate, we're collecting legally defensible fees as part of development projects. So the financials of this proposal, consulting services agreement has a total request of $367,700. Quite often when we come up here, we will include a little bit of management reserve above what the contract value is, just if important things come up and we think there's value to study those. I want to point out that there is a management reserve already included in this contract amount, so I didn't want to add on to that. And what that would be used for is let's say when we're taking a look at biosolids, we had scoped 3 alternatives, and we said, really, we can't narrow it down to fewer than 4. What would it cost to include, studying 4 different alternatives here instead of 3? That's what we would authorize some of that management reserve to use. This will be funded. We have a couple line items, a facility plan line item and a rate study line item that would be used to fund this study. I realize now I did not include a slide about timing of this. The anticipated duration is to work through this year with really those deliverables and workshops in the spring, late winter, early spring of next year, with a final plan March of +23.
The dollar amount looks large until you look at the dollars we're spending on a wastewater plant. And in order to make sure that what we are doing is properly lined up so we have the financial resources to pay for it, yeah, it's a large number, but I think it's money well spent to protect us in the future. Any questions, Craig? Seeing none, thanks, sir. Next item on the agenda is citizens' issue in this
We
section.
need a motion.
Oh,
I'd move to approve the contract with JAB
sorry.
Engineers for the water reclamation facility planning study and financial plan.
Second.
motion second. Thank you very much, Shannon. Further questions or comment? Roll call, please.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. I was thinking that was just information. I'd forgotten that it was actual contract, so thank you. Citizens' issues section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to speak, come forward, please. Seeing none. Administrative staff reports. Post Falls crime rates. Chief.
Mayor, Council, Greg McLean, Chief of Police. Let me get this set up real quick here. So you guys received an email a few weeks back talking about how an individual collated the increase in population to go along with what was called a huge increase in crime. And so I was asked to do a comparison for you guys to give you an example as to what crime is looking like now, cover a few issues on, you know, what might be causing some spikes in those specific areas. What I did is, if I went through every category, we'd be here till midnight. So what I did is I picked years, so 19 through 21, because we don't have 22's full amount yet. And then I picked specific categories that are of interest to most people, burglaries, thefts, and stuff like that. So before I get into most of that stuff, I wanted to recap population increase. So in 2019, we had about 33,000 people in Post Falls. That jumped 16% in 2020 to 38,500. And then it jumped again 2.5% in 2021 to 39,452. And then again, a jump 6.4% in 2022 to 42,000 in population. So when I looked at these, again, you're not going to see 2022 until the end. I did kind of a little bit of a comparison so you could see some of the areas that increased in 2022 to this date. Assaults, when you look at assault, you have simple assaults broken down in categories: assault with a knife, assault with a gun, or aggravated assault. So in 2019, we were running about 280, a high time in 2020. And I collate a lot of this stuff where you see the increase like in assault. During this time period, towards the end of 2020, we started to see the COVID impact coming into these crime rates. So you have people that were debating between masks or no masks, and people were angry, and you started getting some confrontations in certain areas, and that's what I see as what was raising that in 2020. And then when things start to calm down in 2021, you see that reduction starting to come down a little bit. So that's kind of what I was trying to do, is find what is causing that jump in that specific year. So burglary, this is categorized in two different areas of burglaries. You have a non-residential burglary, which is forced or unlawful, so you're looking at maybe someone breaking into a vehicle or a shed. And then you have residential added into it, which is the attempt or forced entry and unlawful entry. So those are all categorized in the same group. So 2019 was the lowest out of the 3-year comparison. Again, 2020 was higher. We were seeing at this particular time, again, at the end of the year, where we were getting construction burglaries. They were breaking into the trailers. They were stealing the equipments. So that's where I'm looking at. Maybe that was a little bit of jump, and again, it's starting to calm down a little bit, but not much, because we see that increase because of the building. So they're still, targeting some of these areas. Yes.
It's kind of a dumb question, but does this include the rash of break-ins of porta potties to steal the toilet paper out of it in 2020 as well?
Well, if it was reported to us and we took a report, yeah, it would be in this category. So.
There were a lot of those.
Larceny, which is basically theft of personal property. The high is in 2021 on this particular one. Low was in the 2020. Again, 2021, you've got all of these construction sites where they're leaving their saws out, or they're leaving stuff out that is getting stolen by people that are going through there. And we were seeing a huge rash in that at that particular time. Vehicle thefts. This one was kind of confusing to me because, we see a high in 2020 and not much adjustment between 19 and 2021. What we were kind of seeing at that particular time was, it was almost like people were stealing cars as Ubers to go back and forth between Washington and the state of Idaho. We would find stolen vehicles from Washington. We would have a vehicle stolen nearby that would end up in Washington, or from Idaho into Washington. So in looking at those as close as I could, that's the only thing I really saw a spike in, is we were just finding each other stolen vehicles back and forth. So we categorize now into the two different kinds of arrests. We have a misdemeanor arrest, we have a felony arrest. So misdemeanor arrest, the high in this one is 2019. Where we saw some adjustment was in 2020 and 2021 was we had law change. Law change prohibited us to arrest on a misdemeanor that didn't happen in our presence, where before we could under certain categories like domestic violence. We also were contacted by the sheriff and asked to try and do more citing and releasing as opposed to taking them into jail, again, because of COVID. They didn't want to get that spike inside the jail, so we complied. We were doing a lot more citing and releasing than before we were actually taking them to jail for misdemeanors. Felonies are pretty close across the board for the 3 years. A felony is pretty much, if you get caught, you're going to jail. I mean, it's just, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. We can't cite and release on a felony. DUIs, this one was interesting to me too. You had 2019 was obviously the high year for the DUIs. The lowest was in 2020. And looking at the revenue for liquor licenses that came in and the sales of liquor, we weren't going down in that. It was going up. So the only thing I can categorize is a lot of people stayed home during this time period because of COVID. They weren't going out and potentially driving while intoxicated. So, and then it's starting to bump up again in 2021. Calls for service. So 2021 is the biggest that we had for calls for service. It calmed down in 2020 a little bit. I think we looked at between 2019 and 2021, we had a 6.5% leap in calls for service. And when you break down the calls for service, it's any time that we build a call for someone, when they call the police department and, the porta potty toilet paper, if we build a call for that, that goes in for a call of service. So also added to that is we respond to medical calls. So if we get a request for a medical check and we go to the scene, that's put into that category for calls for service. So what I did to try and help you see what's happening in 2022 so far is I just took January 1st till February 14th, which is as far as we can go on building those stats for 2022. So you can see where we're lining up between 2029 under that same time period through to 2022. So 2020 obviously was the highest in that 2-month period, but you can see we're above board in 2022 right now for the calls to service.
Greg, 2022, is that just for a month and a half, or is that for the?
From January 1st to February 14th.
Month and a half. It's right above.
And they're considering the
Oh, I'm
same
sorry,
months
it's same period, thank you.
Yep, across the board there. So what I also got from that email is that individual was alluding to the fact that violent crime was going up as well because of the influx in population. And I have to say, and you guys see our press releases coming out, over the last couple months, we've been getting hit pretty heavy when it comes to violent crimes. This specific topic area where I'm talking about here is going to be the end of 21 to 22. So we had a road rage incident on I-90 that wound up with shots fired and one individual getting struck in the leg. When you look at the suspect in that individual case, he lived in Post Falls since 2010. Attempted murder-suicide, that wasn't a couple weeks back. This particular individual had lived in the Coeur d'Alene area since 2006. We had a homicide, which was last week. This suspect lived in the area since 2002. We had an incident up on Pole Line and Highway 41 where an individual took a random shot at a vehicle, struck the victim in the neck, and this suspect had lived in the area here between Spokane Valley and Newport, Washington since 2009. And then just last week, we had a child abuse of an infant that the suspect has lived in Post Falls since 2010. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that most of these violent crimes are really occurring with locals right now. I'm not seeing out-of-state stuff that's bringing this violent crime forward. So I will stand for any questions that you guys might have.
That's good information, Chief, and it's easy for folks to assume that once they start seeing crime, it's because of the people moving in, coming from other areas. So I think that last slide was very telling. Again, thanks for the information. Questions, Greg?
It seems like on your first slide, when you were just demonstrating the increase in population in the last 3 years that you're including in there. The total incidents seem to remain somewhat static in all categories, maybe a spike here and there. So it seems to me like the actual rate of crime would be going down if the incident number is the same and the population is increasing.
Right.
Is that a fair analysis?
That's not usually what we're seeing, though, because when you break those up into different categories, there's tons of different sections under those particular ones. So you've got loose animal calls, you've got impounded vehicles, you've got the medical calls. You know, I've got like 3 pages of just everything within those specific categories. So depending on what's happening at the time, we may get an increase in abandoned vehicles where we're towing those, so that's going to jack that rate up a little bit.
I think your point was that crime itself has not gone
Crime
up.
itself really
Oh,
hasn't
correct,
gone
yes.
up per
Yes, I agree with your
correlation
statement.
to the population growth.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Even in the calls for service, he said there's been an increase of about 6.4% since from 2019 to now.
Right.
Which almost exactly mirrors the increase in population, so
Correct,
it's a constant rate anyway.
yes.
Anybody else? Sure.
I thank you for doing that, because it is something that we all hear, but I hear also about this terrible crime rate, and, you know, all crime is bad. But I sleep well at night knowing that you all are on the job. So thank you for what you do every day, and thank you for preparing this for us, because facts are good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Next item on the agenda is mayor and council comments, and I don't think I have any comments tonight. Council? I don't know. Good. We do need an executive session.
We do.
How long?
10 minutes.
10?
10.
Okay.
How long did you say?
10 minutes.
About
10
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Move to adjourn to executive session.
Do we need a site code?
Yes, we do.
Move to adjourn to executive session pursuant Idaho Code 74-2061F. To communicate with legal counsel or the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigations or controversies not yet litigated, but imminently likely to be litigated.
And it will last no longer than.
To last
Last no longer
approximately.
than
You should say approximately.
To last approximately 10 minutes.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passed. We'll enter executive session. Call the meeting back to order. Are there any motions to
I
come
move to
forward?
adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.